really excited today to have Derek with us. Derek is a quantitative experience researcher at Google and the lead investigator for DORA. Derek focuses on survey research, log analysis, and figuring out ways to measure concepts that demonstrate a product or feature is delivering capital V value to people. Derek has published on human AI interaction, the impact of COVID-19's onset on smoking cessation, designing for NLP errors, the role of UX in privacy discussions, team culture, and AI's relationship to employee well-being and productivity. His current extracurricular research is exploring ways to simulate the propagation of beliefs in power. I will say before we jump in, it has just been such an experience getting to work with Derek on this year's report. I am so thankful to him. I had a lot of questions that were, I would probably say, are stupid questions, although some people say there's no stupid questions. And he took the time to really explain the data, explain the analysis, and really thankful that he's able to join us today and help us do that around trunk-based development. So with that, we're going to get started. And I think it's important as we get started with this is that we first talk about what questions we asked about trunk-based development. And DORA has explored trunk-based development for many years. And today we're going to continue that discussion as a community. But when we ask questions, you'll notice in these questions, we're not specifically saying trunk-based development. We're looking at the characteristics of the capability. So we asked them, for their development practices and the patterns that they follow at work, we asked them to rate how much they agree or disagree with these statements. And Derek, I don't know if you have any thing you want to mention around the questions.
Yeah, hi. So as you might know, every year, or you might not know, we do a factor analysis, right? So we try to find how these items group together. And this year, we found that two of these items actually didn't fit that well into our construct of trunk-based development, right? So one, our team is not subject to code freezes when no one can push to trunk or main. It doesn't seem, people answer this in a different way than they do these other questions, right? The correlation between these is lower than you would hope if they'd be put together. So that question, the fourth one, the one on the very bottom, is not part of the latent factor that we used. So when we say trunk-based development, doesn't include that any longer, but we did ask that question. And then the third one, there are fewer than 3 active branches on an applicant's code repo. We found that larger organizations were less likely to agree with this question. Maybe because, or larger teams and larger organizations, maybe because that's harder to accomplish if you're on a bigger team or in a bigger organization. So that question, considering it was contingent on the team size and your organization size, also didn't really fit in. So we're really, the top two, when we say trunk-based, at least for 2023, that's kind of the way we operationalize that concept, those first two.
So. Thank you, Derek. All right, so now what we found in 2023. So Derek, when I see this, right, I know what mean means, I know what median means, but I wondered if you could kind of better explain for all of us when we're looking at this, what we're looking at.
Yeah, I really wanted to put a little histogram up here to sort of show this. We scaled everything from 0 to 10 this year, so it'd be easier to talk about, at least among the team and also with everybody. Also, it sort of standardizes it across years. So if we look at a 5.6 this year, it'll mean the same as a 5.6 next year, which isn't true for the way we used to do it. So it's from 0 to 10. So 5.6 puts us right about in the middle of that possible range. And what you're seeing here is the mean. So the average, the 5.6. It's nice to see the mean and the median are kind of close to each other, right? So sometimes they can be a little bit off. And that usually means the data is skewed or is some outliers that are pushing the mean in a certain direction. And the interquartile range is to sort of give us a sense of spread or variation in the data, right? So we're trying to see between the 25th percentile and the 75th percentile, this isn't technically the interquartile, but it's the range that you would use for it. So 50% of the middle respondents are between 3.9 and 7.8 on trunk-based development, which would look great on a histogram that I forgot to put here.
Thank you. Maybe that will be good for maybe a future blog post or something. We can expand on it. But I do think that's helpful too. If you go back to the report, you'll see that we have this information for all of the things that were investigated. So you'll be able to kind of look at that and better understand what you're looking at. All right. So here's the fun slide, Derek. You know, we see that those teams that are using trunk-based development, that it's having kind of a minor increase on their team performance, on their organizational performance. But we saw this finding that maybe it has a substantial increase on burnout. And that, I think, gave both the team of us that were working on this year's report and the broader community that definitely raised some feelings. And so curious your thoughts, what you saw and what you're thinking around that.
Yeah, and this is something since we've seen this 2 years in a row now, it sort of warrants probably not just treating as an anomaly, thinking about it more as, you know, sometimes if you flip a coin 10 times, it comes back heads 9 times, and it can still be a fair coin. That's getting harder and harder for us to entertain at this point. Now, it doesn't mean this isn't a spurious effect that's a result of our modeling techniques, right? Maybe there's a third variable we're not picking up on. Maybe burnout is just one of many mechanisms by which by which trunk-based development impacts team performance or organizational performance. Maybe it's a byproduct. That's not the way in which it works. It's just something that's an undesirable result. I think it's also worth noting, though, that when you start looking to see how homogeneous this effect is, that is, does it depend? Is there any conditionality built into this? You do find it. You find that people who are earlier in their careers, this relationship between trunk-based development and burnout is stronger. There's a stronger effect there. People who are a little bit more veteran or later on in their careers, this effect goes away or even slightly reverses. You also find that people who are newer to teams, regardless of how experienced they are, find this effect's a lot stronger for them too. So if I'm brand new to a team, the effect of trunk-based development on burnout is going to be stronger. So these are the things that we can kind of use to piece together what's going on here. But in my mind, understanding this is going to be a result of kind of seeing, what are some of the other conditions in which this effect disappears? Or what are some of the other conditions where this effect gets more pronounced or accentuated? And what are some mechanisms, right? So like trunk-based development affects burnout through, like, what happens? Is it because people have to code in a very public area? Is that what does it? Is it that if you look at some of these questions we were asking, right, does it suggest that maybe there is a little too much pressure on maybe an IC or something along those lines? I mean, the amount of hypotheses that we could generate, we probably should, if this is something that the community wants to look at more, and then we could test them. Another thing is, if we go back to, I'm not going to ask to go back, Amanda, but like, if we think about the questions we actually ask, right, are we operationalizing trunk-based development that's not aligned with the way that we all think about it? So then when everybody's confused about this, maybe we're all just confused about it because we're talking about a different thing. And we could do a way better job of operationalizing this. But hopefully not, because that's how they've been doing it for a while.
But I think that's what makes this so great when we look at, the steps of our methodology and our approach to the research. Step 8 is coming to the community and having these discussions and kind of synthesizing and figuring out what do we need to do? What's the next steps? Are there different hypotheses? So excited for the discussion here in a couple minutes to see what everyone else is thinking. So last week, or I guess maybe it's 2 weeks ago now. Time is weird for me right now. I forget what day it is. We had discussions around documentation. And one of the things that, Michelle touched on was how the presence of quality documentation really helps the impact of these technical capabilities. And when I saw this, I thought it really raised a lot of thoughts in my mind about how much it does in relation to trunk-based development. So I don't know if you've got any additional thoughts on that, but I just, it makes me feel even, and that some of the discussions we've had as a community early on about the report is, do we understand it? Is it hard to do? But when there's clear documentation, especially if I'm new to the team or I'm a junior developer, is that what makes it help more? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, and that's sort of what we're thinking about when we try to understand the conditionality here. Seeing how pronounced it is for trunk-based development, it might suggest that you need really particular circumstances for trunk-based development to work well, right? I mean, all these other technical capabilities are supported by documentation, definitely. These are all significant effects, but the fact that it's, magnitudes more pronounced for trunk-based development suggests that it's super contingent on the circumstances, at least documentation. What we're seeing in more and more analyses, it's like, well, maybe in general, we're seeing this burnout effect, but it doesn't need to be that way. You just need to create and foster a really particular climate for it to work. Which just not as true for some of these other technical capabilities. And they just seem to have more of a general impact. So
then what we also saw here, and I think if you can kind of explain this a little more, but that, it has kind of a minor increase on software delivery, but that it's mediated through continuous delivery. Can you expand on that for all of us?
Yeah. This was just meeting with a few continuous delivery folks who are just think that everything goes through continuous delivery. Like all roads go through continuous delivery to get to whatever outcome they want. And this was just our way of testing that. So you see, okay, trunk-based development has a minor increase on software delivery performance. There are analytic techniques that allow you to sort of look to sort of ask the question, why? Why is that happening? And when we tested, is continuous delivery a possible pathway that trunk-based development is able to have an impact on software delivery? We find yes, right? Indeed, when you include continuous delivery in the model with trunk-based development, the effect of trunk-based development on software delivery goes away. It just disappears. And in statistics, that's a sign that, well, probably they're sharing a lot of the same variance, but it's a sign that it's potentially mediated through the variable that suppresses it, right? So if I put trunk-based delivery in a basic model with software delivery performance, there's a minor increase, there's an impact. The second I throw continuous delivery in there, the effect of trunk disappears, which in some of these more nascent causal modeling and causal inference theories is a pretty interesting sign that would suggest that continuous delivery is a pathway by which trunk-based development has an impact on software delivery performance. So yeah, I was just sort of in there for the continuous delivery folks who are really interested in that.
Which there's a lot of us, right? And thank you for listening and digging in for those thoughts. So of course, a good portion of our research and what we're trying to do is help the well-being, right, of our teams. And so you also looked at how trunk-based development, how culture plays a role in that. And I don't know if you have any kind of things that popped out or thoughts that you wanted to share around the effect you saw that trunk-based development had when it comes to culture.
Yeah, I think there's some, I guess, active debate about which way the arrow should go, right? So some of these technical capabilities, does culture emerge from that? Or do these technical capabilities need the right culture to be, for a team to be proficient at them? And I think we decided, if you look at Dave's core model, that it's a bi-directional relationship between culture and these technical capabilities. So however you want to think of the causality here is up to you. I tend to think of it as a feedback loop, right? But we see that trunk-based development and culture are dependent on each other, one way or another, however you want to look at it. I tend to think culture enables us to have these proficiencies sometimes too. But we can the way we phrase it here is Westrum, right, if your culture has some of this sort of these generative culture aspects to it, you'll see a substantial increase in trunk-based development. I'm not going to read through all these because I think
Yeah.
it would take a while, and we're
It's
probably
okay.
going to get to a discussion.
We want to get to the conversation.
Yeah, but three interesting ones that I see here is
Oh.
Westrum, user-centrism, and the last one, which was work distribution.
Completely agree. Okay, so why we're really here today is to have this discussion as a community, and the DORA research team really is interested to hear from all of you today. What have been your experiences with trunk-based development? Do the findings in this year's report, do they map to your experiences? And what other hypotheses do you think we should explore as we are going into 2024?